recording. There we go.
Okay.
You should have. There we go. Yeah, all kinds of things popping up. Yes, that way is better than
Okay.
otherwise I'd have to look like this the
Yeah.
whole.
No,
I've got a bad, yeah, and I've got a bad neck. So how are you? You well?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very good actually.
Good.
Now.
I appreciate. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, enjoying the weather, which is always nice. Is it nice? You're in Wales, right?
Yeah, Cardiff. Yeah, it's pure blue skies out there right now, which is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, nice change.
yeah, for Wales especially, right? Yeah, you're lucky.
Cardiff is actually the rainiest city in the whole of the UK, which I didn't know
really?
when I moved here.
So, ironically, I live in Eastbourne, which is the sunniest town in the whole of the UK. Apparently.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, we apparently get the most sun out of any place, and I think it's something to do with we're in kind of a basin almost. So it's really weird. You can drive outside of Eastbourne like 5 minutes, and it's pissing it down with rain.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, but you drive back in, and it's just like there's like a little protective dome over us or something. Which is.
I used to live in Bournemouth, so we used to call it Sunny Bee, Sunny Bournemouth, because it was just a little pocket like that as well. Yeah. Bit different here. Everything's green here. All the trees are covered in like moss, and all the signs as you come into Cardiff are like covered in green algae and stuff because it's just so wet.
That's so appealing, isn't it? Just mold. Yeah. I like the fact that we've started this conversation as well talking about the weather. Like that's so British. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the go-to.
I was loving it as well. I was really enjoying it.
Yeah. Me too. Well, that's the thing though. That's how British you can be, is when you genuinely enjoy talking about the weather. And it's not just like a thing you go to just because, you know, you're out of things to talk about, but like you're actually like infused about it, you know.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is like if you get really excited talking about traffic, you know, on the way to meet someone, like, oh yeah, it was terrible. Like, you know. Yeah.
I've lost all my traffic chat because I work from home and I just never leave the house.
Me too.
I've forgotten what it's like.
Oh, the commute to work was terrible today. The missus was like in the way, and I couldn't get to the bathroom. It was it's a nightmare. But anyway, I really appreciate you jumping on. How do we come across each other? It was in the comments section, wasn't it? Of one of, I think, talking about the first episode that I found. You are the second.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then I've got the third later on today, and then the fourth, fifth, and sixth next week. So it's all happening now. Loads of people coming in, which is brilliant. And the idea, like we talked about, and like I was sharing on that post, is to speak with founders like yourself, and find out about them really. So you know, as you can probably tell, it's a bit more casual. I'm not going to sit here and ask you. I haven't prepared a load of questions. We'll just figure it out, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, what I always like to do, though, I suppose the one thing that is a bit formal, which I want to start, you know, to start off everything, is ask, who are you? What's the business? So, you know, the floor is yours, I guess.
Sure. So I'm Jess Potter. I'm the co-founder of Used and Loved, and Used and Loved is like the Skyscanner for secondhand shopping. Actually, that's my old saying. I've just realised. I don't know why I came out with that. I haven't used that for so long.
It's the old elevator pitch.
Yeah, the new one is that we're the Amazon and Pinterest for secondhand shopping, because we used to just be an aggregator for secondhand, where we bring all the secondhand listings together from eBay, Oxfam, Vinted, and 25 other websites, and more to come. But now we're actually curating secondhand as well with content creators, but I will share more about that in a bit.
Yeah.
So our main aim is to reduce the overconsumption of new. And the way that we want to do that is by making it easier to find secondhand and make it easier to transition from buying new to buying used, because the experiences right now are so different, because you need to know exactly what you're looking for with secondhand. You can't just browse. You can't just have fun looking around to see what the amazing stuff is that's out there. But we know how much amazing stuff there is out there, and there are experts and masters of secondhand shopping that can share, you know, all the amazing stuff. So that's kind of our plan, to have a huge impact on the way people shop, basically.
Yeah. No, I really love it, because it's something that it really interested me, because it's something I've been quite interested in for some time, which is I've always sold stuff on eBay, right? I've always had this thing where I buy a lot of crap. I get into different hobbies, I buy a lot of stuff, and I just can't bear the idea of just throwing stuff away or it being wasted. And so I'm always got listings on Facebook Marketplace or on eBay. And so I really appreciate the value. And I think a lot of us do these days. And especially recently having my wife and I's second child, our first, sorry, I should say my second. When you have a child, you pretty much get everything secondhand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, either it's handed down to you or you're finding it on them, because otherwise it would just be too expensive. And so it was really interesting that you connected with me and wanted to join on. And then I looked at Loved and Used at the time, where I was literally going on Facebook and eBay trying to find all these secondhand things. It's just really interesting.
Yeah, we came up with the idea when we were pregnant with our first.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, because we decided we weren't even sure whether to have children, because we were trying to do as much as we could to reduce our carbon footprint, and then adding humans to the planet just went against everything that we were trying to do. So we decided that we would only buy secondhand for them, because obviously babies need, well, you think for the first, it's like so much stuff. And that's when we realized how time consuming it was, and how many millions of people would have just given up and like gone and bought something from Amazon because it took way too long to find the thing that you're looking for. And so we were like, if we just make it easier for everybody, then all these babies that are starting their life with secondhand will be more likely to carry on their lives of secondhand. So that's the driver.
Or you need to be like somewhat literate in things. So like I got a lot of stuff on eBay, but I'm very familiar with eBay. But I think, for a lot of people who aren't, that's quite difficult. And there's a lot of scammers and stuff on who are quite predatory on these platforms, who are like, say, oh, send me the money via transfer. And if you don't know, if you've never done it before, you'll get caught in that, right? So there needs to be some sort of layer of protection and accountability for those sort of things, for sure. It's interesting you said, though, that your child was kind of the catalyst for it, because if I was at an event the other day in London, and I met several founders who said that their catalyst, their seed for their company or their startup was having kids, either because it was the idea was directly associated with them, or because it was kind of like that moment where they were just like, fuck it, I need to do something different. Either way, you swear as much as you like if you want. And that's interesting. It's like, it seems to be like children are very responsible for a lot of the startups we see, which I suppose is both good and bad, because there are some terrible startups.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because actually when we first came up with the idea for Used and Loved, we were buying so much stuff, because I got pregnant with Wilson, our first, when we moved into our house 3 months previously. So we were like filling up our house with stuff that we needed, buying all stuff for the baby, just like getting set up with our new life in Cardiff, because we moved from London. And so we were buying loads of things, but now 5 years later, we actually don't really need to buy much stuff. So we don't even really need to use Used and Loved that much. But it's really interesting how stuff evolves, and the need fluctuates, for the things you go through in your life. But it's weird how you prioritize stuff, right? And the thing that I find, like, because I like stuff, right? I think we all like stuff, but the thing that I find a little frustrating about having a child is that you only need it for a very short amount of time, and then you need other stuff for a very short amount of time. Like, that's really annoying to me, because it's just like just keep it, just stay the same size, like just make up your minds, basically. So how old is your sorry, what's your child's name? Wilson and Matilda as well. So we have a 5. Wilson's 5 and Matilda's 3. Tilly.
Oh, okay. All right. Double threat then. Double threat.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to move to Wales?
So originally we wanted to set up a campsite in Wales. That was our life plan. But then we decided, rather than moving from London to the middle of nowhere in Wales, we would move to Cardiff, because it's another capital. It would be a softer landing. And we just really loved it here. And also we came up with the idea for Used and Loved, obviously. So the campsite is out of the window now. Maybe when we're older, but who knows?
Is the campsite code for cult?
No, I think
okay.
we actually did a lot of research going to campsites and interviewing the campsite owners to ask them what it was like, you know, running a campsite. We did loads of research, and actually it's not as easy as it seems. I thought it was going to be like a really nice laid back type of way of life, but actually it would have meant that we would have had young kids doing all the physical stuff every single weekend. You wouldn't get a break, and we were going to build like the whole thing from scratch just on a field, and it just would have been way harder than we realized. And plus also one of the last people we spoke to said that once you decide to do that, you can't just uproot and go, but your kids turn into teenagers and they hate living on a campsite because it's in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing for them to do, and you can't take them places at the weekend and all this kind of stuff. So I'm glad that we didn't do that.
You've dodged a bullet by the sounds of it.
Definitely dodged a bullet, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? For when it comes to business ventures, everything is infinitely harder than you anticipated it would be when you look into it. Like something can look quite simple as a business concept or, you know, something like that. Like even someone I spoke to recently. So I like, for context, I speak to founders all the time, not just even outside of this, to give out sort of free advice, you know, from a commercial advisory perspective and so on. But I also I sort of extend that to even like threads on Reddit that are for entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs. So I speak to like sometimes teenagers and stuff who are just like, how can I get into this? And there is this kind of misconception about everything being like, oh, everything's easy. Like, you know, Instagram tells me I just need to change my mindset and then I'll be able to do it, you know. And there was this one kid I spoke to, I think he was like 15 or 16. And he was like, I've got this idea. I really want to do window cleaning. And I was like, brilliant. Like that was music to my ears, because it wasn't like, you know, he wants to be the next Jeff Bezos or anything. He's like, he wants to graft, and he understood that would have to be his first thing before he could do his next thing. But then when we started breaking down like what he'd need to do in the next, you know, couple of weeks or months or whatever, he was just like, geez, just to clean some windows. And I was like, like it's hard, you know?
Since me and my partner Davey, who's my co-founder, he's the technical co-founder. Since we got together, we actually met at Glastonbury 9 years ago or something.
Awesome.
And as soon as we got together, we were brainstorming business ideas. We just are meant to be together in business as well as life. So we would brainstorm business ideas and we'd come up with all crazy different types of things. And we just kept coming back to the fact that, you know, it would be great to do something that was like Airbnb, where you're just the middleman. You know, you don't actually need to have the things or do the things yourself. You just like point people in the right direction. And it sounded so easy. We were like, yeah, that's just, you know, that's all we have to do. Yeah, obviously everything has its complexities and challenges and stuff.
Oh yeah, and by the way, you've said a few things there that I absolutely have to delve into in a minute. But it's interesting you raised that, because in the last I don't know if you watched the first episode, but in the first episode, it was funny. We talked at one point about how the ignorance to something is sometimes quite useful, like, because it means you go into it like just like, oh, we can do this, and you know, by the time you realize how difficult it is, you're too far into it to really, you know, be clever enough to stop.
It's exactly that. So
and you need that, because actually if you knew all the information up front, it's exhausting and you probably wouldn't try. You know,
your brain was really good at protecting you, I think. So like during COVID, while it was all like the worst of it, we coped, you know, like we coped with it. It was hard, but we coped with it. And then when COVID finished, my brain was like, oh my God, like I suddenly couldn't cope anymore. But with the business, we knew at the start that what we were planning on building was a global business that, you know, was going to be huge and was going to have millions of people using it and all of this stuff. But we could not comprehend what that actually meant. Like, what does that actually look like? And what will that involve? And what do we need to do? And how different are our lives going to look? But it was really good that we didn't have a clue, because like you said, if we really did know, then we never would have done it. And like when I have ADHD, so this is how I came up with the idea, because before I go to sleep at night, I have to have like a notepad or use my phone now to write down any inventions that I have, because I always invent things before I go to sleep, and then I can't sleep if I don't write them down. So anyway, so this was one of my inventions. And in the morning, I told Davey about it, and I said, you know, we could just bring all these websites together, and it would make it way easier for everyone to find secondhand. And at the time, he was a front-end WordPress developer, so not a full-stack developer at all.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, I think I could do that. Like, again, like complete naivety. And if he'd had any idea that it was going to take him 5 years to get to this point, he never would have said yes. Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. If someone had come up and said, yeah, you can do this, but it will take you 5 years, and it will involve the X, Y, and Z, you've just been like, oh, in that case, no, there's probably something easier we can. yeah, it's a but so yeah, you said so many things there that like so Glastonbury, first of all, awesome. I was talking about Glastonbury actually at the networking event. Yeah, that is really cool. Like I've only been a couple of times, but it's like by far and away the best experiences I think I've ever had. So tell me about what year was that? So nine years ago,
I think. So
right, okay.
Yeah, so it was my first Glastonbury. He'd already been for a couple of years before, a few years before. And he actually had I don't know if I should be saying this on here, but I'm going to say it anyway. He had a ticket that he bought from an old man because he didn't get a ticket in time. And so this picture had like long grey hair and a beard, and he didn't get in with the ticket. But he ended up, like, I really don't know if I should say this. I might ask you to cut this bit out at the end.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll think about it. But he just snuck in, basically.
Oh, you can keep that in. Come on, everyone was sneaking in back in the day.
He just walked straight through the gate. This was, again, a long time ago, and we've actually tried since, and it doesn't work anymore.
No, not anymore.
But yeah, he snuck in, and so we were all camped together as my friends and his friends. We were all mutual friends, but I just hadn't ever met him before. And then he turned up, and everyone was like, "Davey, you got in!" And he was telling everyone his story, and he was wearing a blonde wig at the time because he was trying to get in from that old man's picture. Anyway, and I just saw him, and I was like, he's pretty fit. And I was like, oh yes, I've got a fit mate. So I just instantly was like, knew he was like my kind of guy. And then yeah, we just like started chatting that night, and then we drank like a whole bottle of rum together, and the rest is history, you know. We just were inseparable ever since. And then he actually wanted to get a lift to London with me because he lived in Manchester at the time, after Glastonbury, and I was like, no, I can't put you in the boot of the van that we'd hired. I was like too sketchy that it was gonna, you know, what if I crashed and he got killed? Like, I just was thinking all the worst things, and plus I just didn't want to get points on my license or whatever. So I was like, no, you can't get a lift, but if you can find a way to London, then you can come. And his battery ran out that night, and I just assumed he wasn't coming, but I'd drawn like a map on one of the Glastonbury pages in one of the books at Glastonbury, and shown him how to get to my house from Balham tube station. And then he turned up at like midnight, like thinking, and he'd like had a bit of a nightmare of how to get there and stuff, but I was so impressed that he'd made it all that way. So yeah, that was just, we were just inseparable ever since, even though we had a 1.5 year long distance relationship before.
Oh really?
Yeah, but
oh right. Wait, who was where?
He was in Manchester. Well, he moved to North Wales back with his parents for a while, and then he moved to London.
Yeah.
Wow,
what a story. I mean, yeah, I like that. I think any good relationship should start with at least one person saying, wow, they're fit.
Yeah.
And ideally a bottle of rum. And I think that's a good combination, you know.
Yeah.
Who were the headliners that year? Do you remember?
Well, funnily enough, I missed all of Friday because of that bottle of rum.
No, that's not a surprise. Yeah, that makes sense.
I tried to get up in the evening to go and meet up with my friends, but I hadn't eaten anything or drunk any water or anything, so I'd been asleep in the hot tent all day, and then made it to see Paolo Nutini, and then passed out in the crowd in front of Paolo Nutini, and had to get picked up by the security, taken across the stage in front of Paolo Nutini and taken to the back. It was a disaster. So I got sent back to my tent. So I missed all of that. So I can't really remember who was on the Friday, but there was Adele. Who else was there? I can't even remember. It was great. It was my first Glastonbury, and we just had the most amazing time.
And have you been again since?
Yeah, we went every year since, apart from obviously the COVID years, and then we had our kids. So we didn't go for a couple of years extra or something, but we went last year. But we weren't going to go this year, but we've actually now got a space to trade at Glastonbury, which
Oh,
we
really?
found out like a week ago. Yeah,
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
I know. We're really excited because
Yeah, they're tough to get. Very tough to get.
yeah, like 3,000 businesses applied to get a pitch, and we applied and they said no, but then someone pulled out last minute and they thought we would be a good fit to take their place. So
Wow, that's amazing. Congratulations. That's huge. I mean, it's a
yeah,
perfect vibe for it, you know,
yeah,
perfect place for it. The
yeah.
thing I was trying to explain Glastonbury to someone at this event, because it was a young lady who was also an founder who was going for the first time this year. She was like, oh yeah, my friends have told me about it for ages, I'm going to go. You know, what advice would you give? Like, what should I expect? Because I've done smaller festivals before, but never anything else. And me and this other guy who had both been, we were like, okay, if you've never done this before, what you've got to understand is Glastonbury is basically a city that pops up over the course of a couple of weeks. They construct a city and then it disappears again. It's a pop-up city. Yeah. That's what you've got to understand. You've got to wrap your head around that. So whatever you do, you've got to plan it like you're in London. Yeah. Don't assume that you can just pop over there and pop over there. Like, no, you've got to plan it, you know. And what my point is though, if you've got a stall there, you know, I mean, you've got the traffic, you've got the footfall of a major city.
Yeah.
Like, you know, of
our target audience as well.
And all of your target audience, which is brilliant. Like you've got the busy, because everywhere's a busy high street pretty much, especially wherever there's stalls. Yeah. So you've got the busy high street in central London.
Yeah, but we're in the green futures field as well, which is just
perfect.
Really great.
Yeah,
really excited.
Oh, amazing! It must cost a fortune, though, right?
I can't say actually. I'm not allowed to say.
No, of course, don't say it. But I'm sure it does. Probably not cheap, I imagine. No, that's really exciting. Though, is that your first stall then?
Yeah, it's actually our first proper festival stall. We've done other events. We actually did the clove swap with Oxfam in Wales, in Cardiff last year, and different kind of things like that, but never a proper festival like this. So yeah, we're now proud owners of a marquee.
Yeah, no, it's good. I like a good marquee. It's a weird thing to say. What was I going to ask? How does it work though, in terms of a stall? Because obviously it's a digital offering, you're connecting websites. So what is it you're going to actually be doing on the stall itself?
So we're going to be raising awareness about the amount of waste that goes to landfill and fashion waste and things like that, and how vital secondhand living is for the future of the planet. So it is kind of making a political statement basically, but then we're also going to be getting we haven't decided who this is yet, so depending on when this goes out, if anyone has any suggestions, we need to find an artist who can design a bespoke t-shirt design for us. So what we normally do at the events that we go to is have our normal design, which says 100% used, 100% loved, on secondhand t-shirts that we buy from charity shops, and then we get them printed with water-based ink, and we normally give them away for free in exchange for signing up to our website, basically, to get more information and find out more about what we do. But we think we're probably going to get an artist to collaborate with us and then sell the t-shirts, or get people. We're also going to get a stamp so people can come along and just get their own clothes stamped with a smaller design of it.
Well, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I like that idea a lot. So is it web only at the moment, or is there an app or anything? Or?
It's web only right now, but we're raising funds this year to build an app. So yeah.
I'm gonna. Do you know what? I should have done this last time as well. I'm gonna share my screen so that anyone watching can. That's you, isn't it?
That's me.
Because I was prepared. I had this all open, ready, and this is the website, isn't it?
Yeah, if you go on the listings page, so we're going to be changing everything soon, and then if you click on like vintage fashion or vintage fashion,
it's on women's vintage fashion.
Yeah. And then if you click on like any of those things, it's like our first step of curating secondhand. So we've just done all of this in-house. So the problem with secondhand is you're faced with an empty search bar and you need to know what to type in to know what to look for, which is the whole lack of browsing. So we started adding the suggested searches for the vintage fashion and men's vintage fashion and things like that, so that you can click through the different suggestions. So this is on cami tops, but then you can click through the top bar to like vintage gingham dresses, or whatever it might be. When you click on skirts, it shows you all the different types of skirts you can buy.
Oh wow, that's really comprehensive.
Yeah, so it's really just uncovering the cool stuff that you can find.
Yeah, that's very cool, because I know a lot of people are hesitant to buy secondhand clothes, and I think the main reason for that is, I mean, unless they go physically to a secondhand shop, they're hesitant to buy them online because of, like you said, it's very rare that you can find a way to just browse
exactly.
in a category. It's like, if you look at Facebook Marketplace, for example, it's like, if you just have a look, it's so random. Yeah, that's really cool. I really like that. What else is there? Baby and toddler. Let's look. Oh, okay, nothing. Oh no, do I have to choose a category for that, or is there nothing listed?
Pick one of the it needs some refining, but
let's go with, what should I go with? Feeding.
And we're going to expand this as well. We're actually getting some interns over the summer from London School of Economics, so one of their main tasks is going to be to build out everything from pregnancy to like older children. So everything you need, you can just browse through it all, because I love it.
Is that meant to be like that? Oh,
which one? Oh,
this one.
I guess so.
That's weird. Very cool. Yeah, it's really impressive. I didn't quite realize how there was layers to it for each category as well. That's really impressive.
Yeah, that's one of our next tasks, is to figure out how to make it easier to discover and see all the stuff.
No, it's fantastic. It's come out. Yeah, it's really, really impressive. It's no wonder it took 5 years to build. It's really there's a lot here.
Plus that our 5-year-old and 3-year-old had a part to play in why it took us so long to build as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a cool idea. Yeah, really, really impressive stuff. I'll check this out, and in fact, I will probably ask my wife if she wants to have a look at this as well, because if there's always stuff that she's looking for. She literally went. She drove like an hour yesterday to pick something up for our baby. Probably could have just ordered it here. Well. Yeah. So do you mind me asking, like, how does it work from a tech perspective? I mean, you don't have to go in grand detail, but it's pulling these listings through. I mean, that must be automated to a degree, right? This isn't someone manually going through and
it's automated. So that it's an aggregator. So we have either APIs, like for eBay, for example, or we scrape websites, or we have access to CSV files, which are through third-party affiliate websites, like AWin. So depending on the format, we have to bring that through to our database, and then our database has to speak the same language, because the problem with secondhand is that all the different websites use vastly different ways of having their databases, but then also for the peer listing websites like Gumtree, and there's going to be loads of secondhand wedding websites that we add and things like that. Everything that the way that they describe things and the way that they add the location and the way that they do everything is really different. So for the location thing, for example, it's the biggest nut to crack, because none of the aggregators that are doing what we're doing have cracked it yet, because it's so complicated. But we're nearly there. So we think we might be the first one to figure it out. But once we've added the location thing, we can add Gumtree back in. We've had to take it off at the moment because the location thing was bugging out quite a lot. And then we kind of bring it all together with an algorithm to show people the different things.
It's really impressive. And I'll be honest, I didn't play around with it as much as I maybe should have before we jumped on. I didn't quite realize like I said, how much it aggregates. It's really quite impressive. And I assume search function, we can look for stuff nearby as well. So
the location thing isn't quite working at the moment. So it will be once we finish this bug fix that we're working on. I mean, it's really quite impressive how much you've done here, though. It really is. Fantastic. Thanks.
Oh, good. Stop sharing for now. Oh, that's weird. There's two of you on my screen. Oh no, there you go. Yeah, very cool. Really, really impressive. Yeah, I'll definitely be having a look at that later with my wife Lana, because of yeah, we're always looking at stuff, and you know, for herself too, she's always buying bloody clothes. So so maybe she should be buying them secondhand. Although, you know, yeah, it's not to say she spends a fortune on clothes or anything, but still. So yeah, you were talking. So you were mentioning earlier about the sort of the main driving force behind this is climate change, is you know, the environment and things like that. So you know, are there any plans to kind of track the potential impact this could have on someone's individual carbon footprint? You know, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to have a dashboard that shows people, for things that they buy through our website, what the carbon savings that they've made are, if they bought them new. But also we're going to have a referral tracker. So if you refer a friend and they buy stuff through our website, you get like a snowball effect. So you'll be able to see the carbon impact that you've had by referring that person to buy secondhand through our site. Obviously they might have bought secondhand anyway, but it's impossible to know that kind of stuff. And if they refer someone, because you've referred them and they've referred them, that will all mount up. So you can see like the massive impact that you can have by referring people to buy secondhand, because I think that's the big, like one of the biggest drivers is seeing the ripple effect, you know, of change, and like the small changes that people make. Maybe they just buy one secondhand thing, but then they're like, actually, that was a really cool thing that I just found. And like, oh, I saved loads of money. Like, that was really awesome. I'm going to buy more secondhand. And that's the change that we want to have, the impact that we want to have, basically. So, yeah.
I mean, it's very smart because of, you know, you can go to somewhere like Amazon, which is primarily new things, right? But there are, like you pointed out, with like this platform with dresses, there are so many platforms where you can get the secondhand thing. Just creating, like you said in the beginning, one area you can go to that gives you an Amazon-like experience. I mean, it creates that level of convenience that we're used to on those sort of platforms to facilitate your entry into the world of secondhand. So it's I think it really taps into something very important. I mean, for me, I'm very used to going on Amazon and buying stuff. I think we all are now, especially since the pandemic. We've become a lot more accustomed to online shopping than ever before. So things have to match user behavior, right? And I think this is the key to a successful startup, especially in SaaS, is that you can't try and teach people how to do a new behavior. You have to match their current behavior with a new concept behind it. Do you know what I mean? Like if it was like, oh, you know, you have to go on this website, but then you have to do X, Y, and Z. That's so infinitely different. That would be too much. But just giving them a similar experience, I think, is the key, isn't it?
And we're going to be able to add Amazon's used listings as well, because Amazon has so much secondhand stuff, but it's so hidden.
It is, You
have to really be looking for it if you want to buy secondhand on Amazon.
It's not prioritized by them at all, is it? You have to change a lot of filters and stuff. Just to sort of change subject slightly, I guess. But you know, when it comes to climate change, like, what's your stance on it? Because if I've my opinion on climate change, and I don't mean the fact that it exists or anything. Don't worry, I'm not going to go down some you know, tin hat sort of thing there. But I mean, my opinions on how we can tackle climate change in the grander scheme of things has changed over the years. I think I was maybe a bit more naive and didn't know as much about it as I thought I did. I think a lot of young people especially think they know a lot more about climate change and how to tackle it than is actually real. So what's your stance on it? Like, obviously this is one way to address that, but like, what else do you think we could be doing to address it?
Yeah, so to be honest, climate change terrifies me. So I live in Cardiff, and it's the 5th most likely city in the world to be flooded by 2050. So my house is like fully in the red zone. And that means that my children, when they're like 30, will be facing potentially like mass displacement, like global refugees, like UK refugees needing to find other places. Anyway, so the fear is what drives me personally, but I know that doesn't work for a lot of people. And actually, the problem with the issue with climate change is that unless you actually want to know about it and want to understand about it, everyone just ignores it. And that's what I used to be like. So before me and Davey met, I was like a retail addict, and he didn't care anything about climate change. Like, neither of us knew enough at all. So we've been on like a really slow, sustainable journey where we started making like small changes, and then like we became more aware, and now we're like very aware. But people's drive to buy new things is driven by greed, by status, by comfort, like human desires that you can't really change, you know?
Yeah.
And so what needs to happen is that the tools available for people to use need to be as easy as they were before, and provide the same things that they got before. Obviously, the best thing in the world would be for overconsumption to be eradicated, like for people to just be happy with what they have, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Exactly. No. There's too many people that are so driven by those things that we have to.
It's not even that they're driven by greed and all these negative things. It's just practicality. Like we have to call a spade here. Like, you cannot live day to day in your life without having some sort of negative impact on the planet or some negative impact on humanitarian issues. Like, it's impossible. And if you were to try and make every aspect of your life to not have those negative effects, you would drive yourself mad. The only thing you could do would be sit in a corner and wither away. That's it. That's the harsh reality of it. So like you said, I think that the right philosophy to have is, what can you do to minimize it? You can't eradicate it, but to minimize it. And in a way, like kind of going back to your platform, absolutely, that is familiar, right? That slots in, and you're not asking, because people's lives are complicated, to ask them to try and do things differently in a complex way is too much. And I think that's fair to say. It is too much.
And one thing that I was talking to one of our investors the other day, and she was saying about how she didn't want us to be going down the route of consumption, like the curation and showing people what to buy and stuff like that is kind of anti what we believe in, really, because it's showing people things that they don't need. That's not what we believe in. But I believe that the impact that this will have is so much bigger than showing people who already don't buy much stuff how to find the things that they hardly ever buy anyway, because they're already going to not be buying much stuff, but the people that buy too much stuff need to be shown an easier way, because otherwise it's not a bad thing if there are people who buy more stuff than they need. At least choose this option rather than going brand new. Exactly. But I mean, we have to bear in mind too, I suppose, there's always going to be a need for new things, right? So it's not like we can live off everything that's made now, halt production and just go, okay, we've got enough clothes, let's just share what we've there's always going to be a need for it. But I think also, so my view on this changed over the last couple of years, in the sense that I've come to realize, and this is just my perception, and I could be wrong, but I've come to realize that being able to afford the time to concentrate on these sort of issues, whether it's climate through your carbon footprint, or choosing to become vegan, or whatever it might be, is very much a privilege. And I've come to realize that in a way that has kind of made me now start thinking about how solutions need to be less about individuals needing to be in a place of privilege in order to have access to them, and more about making them accessible to absolutely everyone. And they can't, and so to that end, about disruptiveness, but also about, to some degree, pretentiousness. Like there's an air of pretension associated with a lot of these topics that regular day-to-day individuals just don't want to touch, because they
they get that sense about them, and they're like, you just don't understand me. And you have to give credit where credit is due. Actually, they're probably right. Like, there's a lot of individuals out there spearheading campaigns and different movements and so on around these topics that have never worked a day in their life, don't understand what it's like for the single parent with 4 kids working 3 jobs. And you're saying to them, oh, you know, all you got to do is compost, and like, you know, it's like, fuck off, mate. Like, you know. So I've kind of come to this realization now that there needs to be, and what I'm glad to see is that there are a lot more solutions out there who are, you know, and founders who are realizing that.
Yeah, and they don't need to be perfect. So when we first were on our sustainable journey before we had kids, and when we first had our kids, we basically were nearly vegan. Like, we still ate things that may contain milk and stuff like that, because that was like impossible to avoid. Not impossible, but for us. But now we do actually buy like a chicken a week that's free range that we cook, and that lasts us like a few days or whatever, mainly because it was just too difficult to get our kids to eat the things that they need to eat to have a balanced diet, to not get too like tired. They're at school and wraparound care, they've got like a full-on day.
Almost like humans need meat in order to survive.
Well, we could definitely survive without it. It's just that they don't like the taste of like a lot of the like lentil based things that we make. And that, to be fair, they are actually coming around to it now. And actually now they're at an age where, like, my son is 5, my daughter's 3. My son is now realizing more about like a chicken meat is from an actual chicken, and he doesn't actually want to eat that, which is like really nice for me, because it means that he's now more open to trying like other things and stuff. But the point is that you just don't need to like feel like you need to be perfect. Like, that's not the point. Like, if everybody just tried to do like one small change, or like one little bit of an adjustment to their like eating habits, for example, or whatever, then it does make a huge difference. You know, there's so many people on the planet.
No, absolutely. But, you know, I suppose my point on this is kind of like that. You know, we have to recognize that making that decision it comes from such a place of privilege. Like, because if you can't be time poor and be vegan. Do you know what I mean? You can't. You can't be time poor to the sense where the only time that you have to cook dinner is half an hour in the evening. You've got no time outside of work, looking after the kids, taking them to school, paying the bills, to even research how to cook well, let alone how to cook vegan and what supplements you need and like all this kind of stuff. Like, we have to identify that is, and that's why I think, you know, I've become quite upset by a lot of the rhetoric around veganism and other forms of sort of climate change movements that are sort of telling people, well, you should be doing this and you're wrong and you're immoral if you don't do these things, because it's massively doesn't take into account, I think, these circumstances of people who are just doing their best to survive, and then you're making them feel bad for that. And I think that's that's a really dangerous way to look at things. Like, it should be, well, what can we do to help with that, rather than, like, you know, the first place to start, in my view, would be screw veganism, learn to cook well, learn to have a balanced diet, whatever that might involve. That's that's the place to start. Because, you know what I mean? Like, that's more important than the other thing, in my view. It's like having healthy humans versus, you know, like, you know, that's more of an immediate problem. Like,
and eating
obesity and like,
cooking,
you know,
with vegetables and eating vegetables.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it makes a massive difference to how tired you are as well. Like, if you eat rubbish, like, and I've been through like a really bad phase of like not having enough time and energy to cook proper food for my kids, and I feel really bad, but I'm slowly now getting back into actually cooking food, which sounds ridiculous, but I fully know the struggle. Like, we are really time poor, and that is probably
just want to shove something in the oven or get a takeaway. Like, it happens. I'm quite passionate about the subject of food, because I'm an ex-chef. Many moons ago, it was my first career. My mother's French, so I was born in a kitchen, pretty much, right? So the topic of food is a huge one for me. And, you know, people have often asked me, because I have, you know, expressed my interest in what can I do and what can we do as a family to be more environmentally friendly, I guess. And I've had several people ask me, would you ever go vegan? And adamantly no is my answer, because I'm afraid I just enjoy eating meat too much. But I absolutely admire anyone who would be able to do that, and who's willing to do that. But it's just not for me. I don't think I could do it. But having said that, I do, we do have like more vegetarian meals every now and then, because you don't need to have meat in every single meal, and that's something that I've recognized over the last few years too.
That's really, because that's all like, and the thing as well is learning to try the like non-meat based dishes, because it is so much easier. Like because I used to love cooking meat, like it was just so much easier compared to cooking vegan. Personally, like I know that there'll be people that have figured out the vegan cooking.
No, I don't know any vegan that says it's easier than cooking regular
my partner's baby's gluten free as well, which just
adds a
whole other complexity for meals, which is just really challenging, and it's made me lose my love for cooking, which is partly probably why I've ended up giving the kids like fish fingers and like stuff that's just just chuck it in the oven. It is hard, and but there is so many things that people can do to live sustainably, like remembering to bring your shopping bags to the supermarket, and like just
you see, now you have to do that because they charge you and it's a pain in the ass. So most people do that, but there are, and again, so that is an interesting one actually, because that is a really good example of how it's just the decision's been made for us, and so it's now become part of our routine for everyone to make that choice, like, and that's the way it should be. Those are the kinds of it's inconvenient, but it in a sense when you forget, but you just make it part of your routine to just take your shopping bags, and that's not too far removed to what people were starting to do anyway with bags for life and so on. So it's like,
I really love that retailers like H&M and Zara and companies like that are all starting to build their own resale businesses. So they've got like resale parts of their website or whatever they do now, because it's showing that there is mass change coming, that the way of consuming is going to be much easier to make a decision to buy used, because those shops will eventually have like whole secondhand sections that you can just like, you can still go to the high street and then buy the secondhand stuff if you want to, and actually find really cool stuff that you can't buy anymore, that is one of a kind, that is a bit more FOMO about secondhand.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing, like it's not like it's an area which has always been, it's only recently sort of coming to the fore. Like I remember when I was a teenager and when I was in my early 20s, like all my friends, especially my girlfriends, would shop at like the secondhand thrift stores, vintage shops, things like that. Like that was in vogue then, and it's not gone anywhere. Like that's always going to be the case. Like even like going to Glastonbury and other festivals, there would always be those big secondhand tents, and you'd be able to get all kinds of crazy stuff in there. Like that's always been a thing. If anything, I saw in fact the rise of that, some areas of that become quite niche and become high fashion in themselves, which is a bit of a shame, but so like it's always been there. There's always been a popular base for it, and especially with young people, because I mean mostly out of necessity, you're quite skint, you're going to get the stuff that like is cheap, and then also to be expressive, younger people like to find the stuff that's older and bring it back, so there's an element of that too. So there's always been that underlying, I think, side of it that's there, but now it is becoming more mainstream. There is one aspect to the way that we've changed in our daily lives to become more family friendly that I'm really against, and it's really upset me actually, and that's the cardboard straw. That's really upset me. It is the most horrendous drinking experience I've ever had. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm not a fan of that.
I'm so I'm like such a supporter of everything that it makes a difference. So I love the cardboard straw, even though I know people don't like it. What I saw one of my friends actually figured out a trick with it is that while you're not drinking it, you can just bring the straw out and like balance it on the cup like that, so it's not actually sitting in the drink, so it doesn't go soggy. But
That's
yeah,
quite a lot of work, though, isn't it? Yeah, it's less so that it goes soggy, because they've got better with that now. They're not as bad as they were. They used to just close and fall apart. And it's just, what's the point in that? But it's less so that, it's the feel. It's the feel of it. It's like, that sense. I don't know. This might just be me, so I might start sounding really weird in a second. But have you ever bitten on a towel?
Oh, I can imagine. So I think I must have done at some point. So yeah.
I don't know why you would have, but you know what I mean. Like there's that. It's that horrible sort of
like cotton wool.
I don't know how to describe it, but like this, so on your teeth, that it's like, it's horrible. And it's that I don't know, maybe I've got OCD or something, but it's the sensation of it. I can't deal with it. I much prefer the idea of a metal straw.
Yeah, the only problem with metal straws is my friend's little girl was like walking along with a metal straw in her drink, and then she fell over, and it like went right up into the top of her mouth, and there was like blood. I wasn't there, but like blood everywhere, and she had to go to the hospital and get it sewed up and stuff. So there's like dangers everywhere. There
is. I mean, I'm sure there's probably been accidents with cardboard straws, but they just probably not as rock and roll as that. But yeah, that sounds pretty awful. Yeah, okay, well, that's put me off those now, so thanks for that.
She's only 2, that girl, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Probably just an age limit thing.
The thing is, I can see that happening with adults too.
Yeah,
especially, you know what I mean?
Pub on a Saturday
night. So getting a margarita or a Long Island iced tea, and that's it. People just walking around like porcupines. Yeah, that would be a terrible idea. But no, that's the only one that I'm not a huge fan of. But otherwise, it's interesting. I mean, look, the other thing as well is we have to. So I'm quite a fan of the idea of electric cars, but I've also seen some data on this that suggests, at least right now, it's not really having. It can't really have any net positive impacts on the environment because of the production of the cars, because of the cost of developing the electricity and the infrastructure in order to deliver the electricity to the cars. It's all just not really having any better impact.
So I did read something on that the other day, that actually right now it's not, but the fact that you can then recycle the batteries and the raw materials, you don't need to re-mine those raw materials. I can't remember the exact facts, but it was basically a counter argument for that, saying it does actually work out in the long run.
In the long run, absolutely. And that's the thing about this, is there's so much conflicting data. I mean, it's the same as everything these days. You can read so much conflicting data, but I think the subject of climate change has more conflicting data than any other topic that there is, because even when it comes to calculating something like a carbon footprint, that is such a minefield. I remember I was working with a startup before that was an eco startup. Myself and someone else founded the company, and we wanted to create, similar to what you mentioned about a dashboard, for users to show them the net positive impact they're having, both on climate change and a few other metrics too. And the climate change, the carbon footprint one, was the most difficult thing. We had to get specialists in to advise on it and consult, and they all disagreed. Like, it was just impossible. Everyone uses a slightly different metric, so it's always a bit of guesswork. And because there's so many individuals in the chain that run into a web, really, it's less of a chain, more of a web, that it's really difficult to be accurate, because it's always being offset and reset somewhere.
And it's really difficult to get the data about the new manufacturing, because it's all cloak and daggers, the companies, the retailers that have all these supply chains and the products from different places and things like that. They're never going to tell everybody, all the actual stats of like how much carbon is used to make that thing. But I think it's like just pretty safe to say, luckily, that stuff that gets shipped over new from China and places like that are pretty bad, and stuff that is already in existence that could be bought secondhand is better. Like, it's just very obviously true. So that's like, when we do our dashboard, we're just going to go quite top line and not go too into detail for every single little thing. It will just be like per weight or per whatever, because it's impossible otherwise. We're just going to have a big caveat and say this is very rough.
Some small print there. What do you think about this idea of veganism actually not being as eco-friendly as a lot of people wish it to? Because now that it's increased in popularity to the level it has,
like
it's actually having...
So I think that it needs to be a balance. I think that there needs to be local, not factory farm produced meat consumption, because that is good for biodiversity and things like that. For if it's done, if the farms are managed in the right way, and that is possible, you know, for if everybody reduced their meat consumption, which I think is essential because the factory farms is horrendous, and that is not sustainable, and they're like chopping down the Amazon to have cows. It's just for meat anyway. So there needs to be a balance, but I don't think veganism personally is the climate answer. I think that
I agree. I don't think it is
unless you like just figured out how to just eat local vegetables and cooked with that, which I just don't think is possible in this day and age.
No, it's not. It's not sustainable. Like, you know, we have to bear in mind that the infrastructure that we have for ourselves has been developed over thousands of years, right? And it serves a very important need, you know, to deliver food to a huge and growing population, and it does its very best to do that. But to suggest that, you know, that one is less impactful than the other, like I think that the argument within veganism that always gets me especially is, like you mentioned there about, you know, cutting down rainforests to for cows. Like, that happens for soy. Like, it's still a huge problem. And then when the argument is more of a philosophical one rather than a climate one, to do with, you know, the morality of killing and harming living things, millions of creatures die for the growth of these crops. So it's it's part on both sides for me. It's you know, it should, like you said, be less about, I think, being a solution or being sort of touted as some sort of, you know, grand enlightened solution to these issues, and more as an alternative in order to have some, even if it's small, net positive kind of impact on these things, right? But not claim to be the holy grail. And I think that's in the same way that the Stop Oil, is it Stop Oil? Protesters are giving that a bad name. So too do a lot of very vocal vegans give that topic a bad name, when in fact the vast majority of people who are in these movements and sort of live them and breathe them day to day are a bit less extreme, and they're just sort of like, look, let's face it, guys, we're not saving the world like this. It's a bit of a combination of things. Let's be real. Like, you know.
Definitely. And it just if the extremists do make it, it puts people's backs up and then just makes people not want to engage at all. So that's counterintuitive. So yeah, I'm all for not being perfect, just doing a bit, trying your best, like not your best, like just trying a bit. And I think as well, once you do start trying and doing like a little bit, you just generally do start going along the journey of realizing the impact that you're having, and like becoming more aware of stuff. And that's a natural process rather than being like forced, you know, or feeling like you have to do that. You just go on your own journey. And like, I loved buying new stuff so much that it took me 5 years or something to like be happy with not buying new. And I still get tempted every now and again, but I also love buying secondhand so much that I'm completely fine with not buying new. But I do still get tempted. Like, if I go into the supermarket and I like look at the clothes section or like the homeware section or whatever, I'm like, oh, that looks really nice, I'd love to just like pick that up, because it's so easy. Like, I totally get it why people buy new, and it's okay.
What do you think about sorry, bringing it back to food, because as you can probably tell, it's a topic I'm really interested in. What do you think about the consumption of insects?
I think that is really interesting. Like, there's a company, I can't remember the name of them now. A marketing agency that I used called Kind was working with them. I'll try and remember the name. They are in that insect meat space, and I think it is essential for the future. Like, I don't want to go all doom and gloom again and scaring people, but like, the future. So to put it into perspective, there were 3 billion people in the planet in 1960, and now there's nearly 8 billion people on the planet just since 1960. Like, it's obviously gonna just keep growing and growing and growing, and like we're gonna run out of everything. We can't have enough animals to feed all the people without chopping down all the trees, you know, and soya and all that kind of stuff. We need like an alternative. I think it would take me a while to come around to the fact that I was eating bugs. Like, I think it would take me a long time to get used to that, unless I tasted it and it really did taste amazing. And I've seen some videos of people eating them like bug burgers, so it just looks like a normal burger, so you wouldn't even know it was meat, bugs, I mean. So I know we can convince our brains that it's okay. It will just be a process.
Yeah. What's really fascinating to me about it is that, because I've tried them and they are really nice, like surprisingly nice. I've only tried crickets. That's the only one that I've tried, but like, man, they're good. Like, you know, you have a little bowl of them, and like whole as well. Like, I'm not saying you need to, I don't think with those ones you even need to change the way they look, because once you've had one and you get over it, like, actually that's quite tasty. But what's really interesting to me about it is that something ridiculous like 80% of the world population already eat them as part of their regular diet. Yeah.
Wow.
So again, this goes back to what I was saying about our place of privilege when it comes to our perspective on these issues. It's like, we don't even consider the fact that 80% of the world's population already consume insects as part of their regular protein intake, and the majority of these countries are third world. Some aren't, but the majority are, and they eat a huge range within their diet. And one of the reasons is, you know, well, I mean, it's just the culturally, but you know, that part of their culture is to ensure that they are maintaining populations of certain things and to sort of spread their impact as best as possible. And also they just like eating a lot of stuff. Like, but I thought that was really fascinating. You know, that because I've seen a couple of pitch decks of some companies and spoke with a few and advised on a couple too that are in that space, and they provided this data, and consistently it seems to show that a huge range eat that. I even saw a documentary a little while ago about how we should be eating more jellyfish.
Oh, I saw that. I haven't seen that, but I've heard that as well, because the jellyfish are taking over the sea. So
eat them. They don't look like they taste of anything, though.
No.
But I suppose they could be a nice carrier for flavor or something. I don't know.
I don't know. But yeah, there will be a way. Like, technology obviously can do anything. So yeah, there definitely will be a way.
A bit of jerk seasoning on it.
Another interesting topic is like the engineered meat. So like, it is real meat, but without the animals, you know, suffering and all of that kind of stuff. So that's an interesting area. I'm not really sure what I think about that. Me neither. I kind of think it makes sense, but I'm sure that there's some ethics of like where that could go, why that's potentially a bad thing.
So I've got one for you. This is going to hurt your brain, and you might have heard this before, but here is a scenario for you. If someone was to propose that they can give you a slab of meat, a burger or whatever, that is cloned from human meat, and that human consented to that meat being made for them, would you consider that the most ethical form of meat that existed? And would you eat it?
I think I'd have to eat it just to try it.
You monster.
For curiosity, kill the cat and all that.
But is that not the most ethical food?
I guess it is, but then it would concern me of like where that would go with, like, because the thing with like AI and all that kind of stuff is if it's in bad actors' hands, like the technology exists, somebody clever built it for a good cause, but then I don't know what the bad things would be. But I don't know.
I mean, you could say that about anything, really.
That's true. I don't know. I think it does sound like it makes sense, but.
Because this was posed a while ago. I can't remember who I was speaking to about it, but they asked me about it because of obviously the bigger issue around for a lot of people when it comes to meat is the lack of consent, that there's obviously harm, that murder. So if consent is given, I mean, that's the most ethical food product that exists, because it's the only food, we are the only food product, if you want to call us that, or the only thing that can give consent. So if something's being cloned from it, but it's just, I suppose it throws up a whole other dilemma, which is then, yeah, but it's your own species, which is generally frowned upon.
I just
in most
what might
circles.
go wrong with it is that it would probably be quite expensive, and then, but if someone liked the taste of it, they'd just like go and kill a homeless person or something. Like, do you know, I don't know, like
maybe. Yeah, we've taken a dark turn, but that was my fault. I hold my hands up. I'm good at that. Yeah, you might be creating a load of Hannibal Lecters out there by getting books on it. And if it's really expensive, then they're likely trying to feed their habit and like robbing banks and stuff.
I think we should not do that.
Yeah, and there'd be like this whole culture of individuals like robbing banks and stealing to feed their cannibal habit. Yeah. Wow, we just invented quite a dystopia.
Above anything that's like an 18 or above, not that you get aboves, because it's generally too scary for me. I get like too freaked out. I get too like into the film, and I get like convinced. I just feel, I'm very empathetic, so I feel too much. So yeah, I don't like the idea. Let's scrap
what
that.
You've just described is the exact reason why I love watching horror movies and stuff, because of that exact reason. I love, because I can get fully immersed in, as long as it's good, obviously, I can get fully immersed, similar to you, and that's what I love, because it takes me on a journey. It takes me outside of myself and scares me and thrills me. It's like a roller coaster, and then you come out the other end of it. Because my son asked me the other day, he's 8, and he asked me, why is it do grown-ups watch horror movies if it's scary and bloody and all this kind of stuff? And that's how I described it. It's like, well, why would you get on a roller coaster if it scares you? It's fun.
Yeah.
But it's not for everyone.
No, I went to uni in Bournemouth and lived with non-uni people, but I remember 2 of them were watching Saw once, and they got me to sit and watch it with them, and I got up halfway through and I just looked at them like, you are sick, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I suppose if you're not into horror, Saw probably isn't the best one, like, because it's there's a certain amount of like, there are films out there like Saw, for example, that are kind of, unless you're a fan of the genre, are just gore for the sake of gore. But there are other horror movies. In fact, funnily enough, I was thinking about one today that I want to rewatch, and it's not even I'm not even sure if you'd call it a horror. It's more of a thriller that's kind of got gory elements to it, called The Green Room. And the reason why I was thinking about it is because it's got Patrick Stewart in it as a main villain. He plays a neo-Nazi in it, and it's hilarious because it's Patrick Stewart playing a neo-Nazi villain. But it's basically about a music venue, and this band. Have you heard of this film?
No.
It's really good. So it's music venue out in sort of bumfuck America, wherever, and this punk rock band get called in. They don't realize it's a neo-Nazi bar, and they, for whatever reason, turn of events, get trapped in this venue and hunted by these neo-Nazis. So it's this band. So it's quite cool. It's like, if you're into the music scene and stuff as well, there's kind of the little Easter eggs there. And it is quite scary, but like, that is a much better film to get into as kind of the genre of horror and being taken on that roller coaster, rather than something like Saw, which is just a like assault on your senses. Slightly different, I think. So, I can give you recommendations offline. No, okay.
I'll just like get scared of the dark. I just can't watch them. Not for me.
So what is your preferred genre?
I'm trying to think of. I do like thrillers, like thriller-ish, like not too thrillery. Like Gone Girl, I really like films like that.
That was a good film, really good. Film.
Just like
so it's a psychological thriller.
Yeah, psychological, but not too fucked up. Basically, like if someone in the film is too fucked up in the head, I feel fucked up in the head afterwards.
Right.
I don't know, personality disorder or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's
like feel like I'm in it.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's kind of, because like you said, you're quite an empathetic person. You have that ability to sort of almost put yourself in their position and start sort of playing it out, because that's a good way to try and help wrap your head around it, is almost sort of jumping into it. You'd make a very good criminal psychologist or something. No, that's really good. Yeah. Do you know what you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about how you have a notepad at bedtime? because you have a lot of ideas and inventions and stuff. Is that a trait of ADHD then?
I think so, yeah. So
I might have ADHD then. Shit.
Yeah, I actually, you mentioned something earlier about having all different hobbies and stuff, and one of the ADHD groups that I'm in, ADHD Divas, which is amazing, WhatsApp group, they shared a post about how someone should invent a company for people with ADHD to just share all their hobby stuff. So you take on a hobby and then you finished with it. So you don't want any of the stuff anymore. So you can pass it on to the next person with ADHD that wants another hobby, and then you just like pass on all the hobby stuff.
Yeah.
Thought,
that's a good idea.
I wonder if you have ADHD when you said that.
I wonder if I do too. I think I probably do. But it's one of those things where for me personally, knowing wouldn't help me in any way. I know for some people they find it validating and this and the other. For me, it would probably have the opposite effect. Like I don't like the idea of, personally for me, labels. I think in fact we've maybe gone a bit too far in society with how we have this desire for putting things into boxes and labeling them, and that creates more division, and so I've got sort of feelings on that without getting too political or anything. But so for me, I don't think it would be too different, and I would be worried that I might start doing things differently, or others would start treating me differently.
Yeah. I'm on
I mean?
the fence as well, to be honest, but I'm really glad that I have had a diagnosis, because I needed that validation, because I just felt like I was so bad at school, but I moved around so much. I've never lived anywhere longer than 5 years, apart from now this house, which is 5.5 years or something. So I just put the fact that I never paid attention at school. I found it really hard to learn anything. Like I just really struggled, to the fact that I moved a lot, but actually this explains so much for me, and I really needed to know that it's not just because like I'm crap at learning and like I just can't apply myself. And for my startup I can, because I absolutely love it and it's like my hyper focus thing, but keeping on top of my house and like all of that kind of stuff, I really struggle with it. And knowing that I have ADHD just helps me be a bit kinder to myself.
Forgive yourself a little bit. Yeah. You see, that's the thing I would be worried about is, while that sounds lovely, I feel like I would take it to the extreme and just be like, you got ADHD, don't do anything today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would take it too far. You know what I mean? I'd be like, you didn't do that.
You've got to know yourself and like what's going to be helpful or not. And I didn't even realize my mum, brother and sister all have been diagnosed years ago, and I just never thought that I had it, because I was like, I've got my shit together. I was the European HR manager for a global data analytics and research company. I'd been there for 8 years. I was like, I'm like, this is all good. Like I can't have ADHD. And then I just saw some stuff on Instagram where people were like explaining what it was like for them, and then I did an online test where you're supposed, if you get like over 12 out of 18 that you say yes to, then you probably have ADHD, and I got like 16 out of 18. I was like and then just went down the formal diagnosis route, but it's just really helped me personally. But I can see definitely why it wouldn't for some people.
Also I think a part of me is kind of like, isn't it just part of personality? Like that while I think it's great that we're identifying these certain what do we call them, oh God, there's a name for it. I'm completely blanking. Things like ADHD and so on. These diagnoses, I think it's really great that we're sort of having more of a conversation about it, just like we did with mental health, and now that's sort of pretty much standard these days. While that's great, I can't help but sort of feel like at the same time, what it's doing is it's making us, just like with the conversation around mental health, making us feel like these things are exclusive in some way, when in fact, like you just said, so many people have these. It's like, well, this is just part of the human condition then, surely. Like this isn't actually the abnormal is actually to be completely normal, like and have nothing wrong with you. Like I feel like we've got to a point now where we're recognizing that you're either on the spectrum a little bit, you've got ADHD, you're probably suffering from anxiety and depression. Like, oh right, yeah, guess what? You're human. Welcome to the world. Right? You know what I mean?
I kind of disagree, because I think, like, from my experience of being in school, for example, I'd say out of the 30 kids in the class, I was the only one that had it. Like, I was the only one that in my class
Mm.
struggled the way I did with, my low power mode thing just popped up. So I think that being able to support the kids, and I don't believe like medication is the right answer or anything for most people. Like, I'm not on medication for it. I just wanted to understand it more so that I could learn more about it and stuff like that. But for my kids, for example, if I think that one of them does end up having ADHD, or both of them or whatever, like, I want to be able to support them with like giving them extra help with things, because I really needed extra help and I didn't have it.
I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. I suppose what I'm saying is, like, it's the way that we've kind of framed these diagnoses is almost like, oh, this is unusual, so we need to take these steps, and the steps is fine. It's more just the way that we kind of perceive them as being these unusual occurrences. And I'm kind of thinking, well, if so many individuals have it, then maybe it's just a pretty standard version of a human mind. And it shouldn't be necessarily seen as something other or unusual. In fact, it's just, okay, so this is part of personality. So in some ways, we don't need the term ADHD. We can just say they have ADHD personality traits, but it doesn't necessarily need a diagnosis, because of actually this is just a personality type. It's someone who is, and again, I might be suggesting to sort of go backwards in a way, but it's more just like, and the reason why I think is maybe because of, I have seen and I do have that perception of how these labels can have a negative effect also. It's like, if you're just approaching it as, okay, we need to make concessions and extra support because of this person is like this, as opposed to they have a medical diagnosis. Like, one worries me a bit more than the other. Do you know what I mean?
I see it as a necessary step for society and systems to be put in place to support humans in a more rounded way. Like, I feel like humans are not going to put all of this stuff in place if they don't have these things. It's never going to happen.
That's true.
So I feel like the necessary evolution of understanding humans, and they're going to look back at this period of time and be like, oh, everyone thought that they were really different, but actually, like, it's half the population have like at least two of these things, or whatever. But I feel like
you need to start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it needs to be taken seriously. So if it needs that label, then it needs that label in order to start moving forward. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, really interesting. Well, you touched on it briefly then, but what about sort of, you mentioned about being a founder. So I know a couple of founders with ADHD, and I think you even followed one. Is it Roy?
Well, yeah.
Is that how you pronounce his name?
I think so. Yeah.
Roy.
Yeah.
He's quite open about the fact that he's a founder with ADHD, and it's got a large following, and as you know. But yeah, what would you say is your experience with it as a founder? Like, is it difficult? Do you have to do anything differently, do you think?
I don't shout about it on my LinkedIn. I haven't even mentioned it, I don't think, on my LinkedIn. I'm fine for it to be in this, and I'm fine to talk about it. I'm open about it, but I don't really talk about it that much, because I feel like we're in quite such an early stage of our business, and we really need investment, that I feel like people that don't understand it, they might just get concerned that it means that I'm not going to be able to do my job well enough, because it does.
No, I think you should be upfront about it and shout about it.
Yeah.
To be honest, because if the worst thing would be someone to come in on board as an investor, and then they will find out about the fact that by the way you work. Like, if anything, being upfront about it means that they are prepared, and you will attract the right kind of investor who wants to work with you close. I think be completely upfront about it. Like, if anything, the more bias, and I was going to ask you actually if you've actually received any of this, the more bias you probably have from investors is the fact that you're a couple and you're co-founders. There's a lot of bias towards that. And I know people who've hidden that from investors to their detriment.
We're very open about that. Like, I know that people do think it's a bad thing, but I very strongly believe it's a really strong advantage that we have.
I agree. Yeah.
So we're very open about that, and the ADHD is definitely an advantage, because I'm like such a problem solver, and I can like multitask and do loads of things at once. But what I'm learning is actually I need to now start refining my like day-to-day work life, and focusing more on things to get things done more efficiently and things like that. So it's definitely a negative as well as positive, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I work with a couple of founders as clients of mine who have ADHD, or even one that's openly mentioned that he's on the autism spectrum. And a lot of what I do with them, if they've asked me to do, is more accountability. Coaching, that sort of thing, to just sort of keep them on track and be like, as we touch points, you know, every week, to be like, how you get on with that, like remind me of the stuff that I was meant to be done, hold me accountable for not doing it, that kind of thing. Like, because if you're the boss, you don't have a boss to do that. And you need that. And what's really interesting in the journey of the life cycle of a startup is, in the very early stages, everyone needs to be a bit of a generalist. And as things progress, then you need to start specializing, and that can be a very difficult shift, even for those that don't have ADHD, because you get into that flow of putting out fires and of jumping where you need to be, wearing all these hats. When the funding comes in, when things start to scale, and then you're expected to just sit in boring fucking meetings talking to executives all the time, it's a bit like, well, this isn't fun. This isn't what we were doing. Like, you know, and a lot of people get bored of that and leave. So yeah, no, I totally get it.
Interesting. And actually, one of the things that you mentioned earlier, or we were talking about earlier, was the not knowing what the future looks like on the startup journey. I still find that really fascinating, because I still don't know, you know, like what the next 5 years are going to look like for us. Like, we're still very much in the early stages. Like, we've got me and Davey and 2 interns, so it's completely different to what it's going to look like. But I feel like it's an evolution where it just, like with a baby, for example, like if you just got given, obviously this happens with adoption, but like if you just got given like a 5-year-old to look after, you'd be like, what the hell do I do? Like, oh my God. But with a baby, you get like a little thing that doesn't really move much, and then it grows up and you get used to it. So
funny enough, that kind of happened to me and my wife. So my first child, who's 8, Archie, from a previous relationship, and long, I won't go into details of it, but long drawn out court battle, and I unfortunately wasn't able to, in the first few years of his life, see him very much because of this very long drawn out thing. So I didn't really, I met him, you know, a couple of times very early on, but that was very difficult. And so this drawn out thing, eventually, anyway, after this very long period of time, by the time he was 4, he moved in with us. So my wife and I, and we had only just got married at that time and only been together a few years, and moved into our house. And bought a house together, and now suddenly we had a full 5-year-old, like just out of nowhere, full time, and that was a very big shock to the system. And then now we have a baby, and so now we're experiencing the baby side of things. We're like, oh, fuck, it was probably easier than what they could walk and talk, actually, because at least he went to sleep when we said, and you know, stuff like that. But then the plus side is he's sleeping a lot and doesn't talk all the time. So there's trade-offs, you know, because my God, does he not shut up? Which he probably gets from me now I think about it. What was I going to ask you? Oh, that's gone from my head. That's annoying. But no, that's really. When did the platform launch officially?
November 21. So it's been live for a year and a half-ish.
Right. Okay. Do you know what? It's funny. I have a bit. Sorry, me talking again, but I have a bit of a theory. You know, going back to what we were saying about how a lot of founders find that children are kind of the catalyst for it. I think it's to do with risk, because you touched on it there a little bit. There's fear of unknown. We spend a lot of our lives worried about the future, right? As teenagers, as young adults, panicking about the future, being concerned about it, getting anxious about it. And I think as you get older, you learn to let go, because you realize very quickly that actually there's always going to be the unknown, and you need to either get used to it or you're just going to be a crippled mess. And kids accelerate that knowledge massively, exponentially, right? Because you're suddenly, like you said, given this thing, and you're like, I have no idea. No one's, you know what I mean? You're like, this is nuts. How am I allowed to do this?
Walk out of the hospital with this.
How is this legal that I am now responsible for another human being? Like, that literally goes through your head, doesn't it? You're like, this shouldn't make any sense, but it does. And so that sort of realization, I think, just makes you think, wait a minute, if I can do this, and this is unknown, I can literally do anything. And it's true. And so
taking the plunge. So Davey started working full time on it about 3 years ago or something, and then I started working full time on it 2 months before we launched, started trading. So before that, Davey kept saying to me, you need to work on it full time. And I was like, no, like, don't be ridiculous. Like, we've got kids and we've got a family, we've got a house. Like, can't just quit my job. Like, we haven't got savings. Like, we are not in a position for me to quit my job. And then I started seeing like a couple of competitors pop up, and I was like, hang on a minute, like, they're all doing the things I want to do. Like, they're making more progress than me because I can't do anything. So I've got my full-time job, the kids, and plus it was COVID, and I was having to like look after the kids from nursery like so much because they kept getting sent home all the time. So yeah, that just made me bite the bullet. And it actually only took me 1 day to decide to quit my job.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I resisted it for so long. I was like, no, I'm definitely not doing it. And then when I made my mind up, I was like, this is the time, it's perfect. Like, I just need to do it now. And then I had a 3-month notice period that turned into 4 months because they got a bit longer. So yeah.
So was that the main driving force then, seeing the competitors do it and you going like, we need to do it? Was that the thing that really clinched it?
Yeah, like before there weren't really any like direct competitors doing what we were doing, and I was like, I think it just put us into a place of like complacency, like, oh, we can just take forever. Like, we didn't want it to, but the build was taking forever. It was taking so long, obviously. So yeah, it just never felt like, well, it was probably a catalyst of things because the website was actually getting closer to being able to be launched, because most people obviously say you need to just launch before you're ready and stuff like that, but we actually couldn't launch because we couldn't show anything. Like, we couldn't show any secondhand listings next to each other without building the thing that brings them all together. So that was a bit frustrating. One thing that I will say, just for if there are, you know, budding entrepreneurs on here thinking about doing a startup, one person told me at the beginning of our journey, like after a year or something, she said, you really need to build your community before you build the product, and you need to speak to your customers and all of this kind of stuff. But we didn't take that advice because I couldn't commit to anything other than my work and family stuff because of everything. But I really wish that we had done something to like start growing the community and start speaking to people. I think I felt like it was just going to be like too big of a commitment to do that. So we just didn't do it. And also we really naively thought at the beginning that we would build the product and people would come, like millions of people would be like scraping at the door trying to like use the product. And that's obviously just not the way it works at all, which we've learned. But yeah, it's just really interesting that people can tell you things at the beginning, but because you really don't know anything, you don't even listen to the advice. It's ridiculous.
Tell me about it. That's what I do for a living. I get ignored for a living by founders. That's basically I get paid to be ignored. But no, I mean, look, what you touched on there is really important. Again, it kind of goes back to what we said about, you know, if you know what is to come, you probably won't do it, right? It's sometimes ignorance is bliss, but there are proven steps, right, that I advise on all the time, that other advisors and those that have been there and done that advise them. Like, I'm sure if, you know, in a few years' time, if you exit or whatever and you become an advisor to founders, you will say, don't do what I did, like, do it the better way. And it is tough because you know, once you lay this out to people of like, do this X, Y, and Z, it creates that problem we talked about, which is, as an advisor, I find the majority of individuals I speak to, when I do lay it out, don't end up pursuing it because it just looks so daunting. Unless you actually sort of say, look, I'll start with you, right? Let's do it together. But the building the community one, funny you mention it. I am a huge advocate of that. Like, huge advocate for all the reasons you touched on and more, in that how much you can learn, you build the product in the right direction, and you've got a baked in user base when you deliver. Like, it's just, I mean, so many reasons why I love it. And what's fascinating to me is, I'm a bit of a gamer in my side. I mean, I would say you could tell because I'm wearing PlayStation headphones, but they're camouflaged, so you can't see them.
The gaming chair, I think, gives it away.
Too, and with game development, that's been a staple of the way games have been developed for years, right? It's, you know, you get the community involved, you find your community, you build it up over time, you get them involved, you get them to play test, you know, you release different versions, you get feedback, you do surveys. Like, that's the norm, you know, and it's been the way in creative media now for some time, you know. So I see no reason why that shouldn't happen with that. But like you said, you encountered the problem of time.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem, and my mental health as well. Like, I struggled with our first baby, just because he was a difficult baby. Some people have it the other way around, like easy first one, difficult second one.
No, they're all a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I don't care when
We had the difficult first one, and I just really struggled with it. And then the second came along, and then COVID happened. So like both times I just was struggling, and my job was really full on. Like I had a lot of responsibility, and I had to commit so much time to that. So any time that I had to take off to look after the kids if they got sent home from nursery, I had to then work in the evenings to make up for it. So it was just really hard, and I wasn't ever going to be able to do that as well.
So is that what you were both doing then? So were you taking time out of work to focus on this, or was it literally just evenings, weekends?
It was hardly any time for me, to be honest, to start with. So Davey was doing all the work to build it, because we knew it was going to take a long time to build the essential, huge, difficult part of it, and that we weren't really going to be able to make much progress. So we were kind of the first thought was that there's no point saying anything yet, because we have no idea yet how long this is going to take, and we don't want to be talking about it and then people just be like, well, where is it then? Like years later, do you know what I mean? So I think it was a good decision that we didn't, talk about it too much, but we could have built a community of secondhand lovers just talking about secondhand. It didn't need to be about the product, I
guess it's tricky though, because not all rules need to be followed all the time, right? So like the other general rule that you would talk, that you generally say when building a SaaS offering would be, build a community, deliver an MVP. And that can be something really basic, like a website that's made through Wix, or something like really strip back your idea and deliver a really simple version of it. But sometimes the ideas they require a V1. Yeah. Sometimes the idea requires some sort of proprietary technology or idea that actually it needs to deliver immediately on that. Otherwise, it isn't the idea.
That's
so
exactly.
It's pointless. Yeah. And this sounds similar to that, because because you've got, like you mentioned about the technology behind it, pulling in all these different platforms. Like that is the essence of what it is. There isn't an MVP.
Not solving any problem for anybody with eBay or whatever.
Yeah. Otherwise, you just have a website that says, click here to go to eBay, click here to go to Etsy. It's like, well, thanks for that. So sometimes those rules are made to be broken, and because of that, there maybe wasn't really a need to do the community thing, because what are they going to test? And what are you going to give them other than the actual product?
We did launch it before it was ready. Like when we started trading in November 21, it basically just had eBay and Oxfam. Like it doesn't solve any problems. And it still doesn't really. Like it still doesn't have all the things that we need it to do to actually solve the problem that we originally had. So it's still going to take a little bit longer until we get there, but we are very nearly there. And it's just funding more than anything now. Like we just need money to be able to hire extra people to get this over the line, like to finish it, pilot our curation thing that we're working on as well, which I haven't really mentioned yet. Can I just quickly say about it?
Yeah, what's that?
So we're going to be working with online content creators, so people who already share their secondhand style, so their outfits, and then they will be able to upload their pictures of their outfits, tag the search terms of the items that they're wearing, and then other people can then see all the secondhand items that are closely matched to recreate that look. So people can shop the look, but for secondhand. So it exists very much for new, but it doesn't exist for secondhand yet. So we're the first in the world to do this, which is really exciting. We're just about to launch our pilot for that. So that's our next venture.
That's a really cool idea. Yeah, because quite often that's one of the driving forces behind individuals buying new is our influencers, and especially with the ability to tag like an Instagram the different items and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, because that is the thing with the idea came out of the curation that we've done manually, where you can like click and browse and stuff like that, but that's so limited and it's very stagnant. But with the content creators who are already sharing their secondhand outfits, it's like changing all the time, and like people can follow people that they like their style. And what I love about the potential of it is the accessibility side of it as well. So if someone's like plus size or petite or, you know, whatever, the things that are harder to find secondhand, and those people struggle to buy secondhand because they don't know as well what, you know, suits their shape and stuff like that. So if they see someone else that is their shape and size that is rocking the secondhand style, they can like find those things. It's like, I just really love that. It's going to open up the world of secondhand for people.
100%. And it's kind of inspirational, isn't it, that if you see someone rocking an outfit and they look really good, you probably wouldn't even consider the fact that it's secondhand unless they say, yeah, everything is secondhand. And then you go, oh, really? I can look good in second. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of validating a little bit.
Yeah, breaks the barrier. And
yeah. That's a great idea. I love it. Yeah. So yeah. And that sort of starts working towards the community effect, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, you know, that will still occur, but it will just be later. And like I said, I think that makes sense that it's kind of almost the next step, because of, in a way, you've now got the MVP, right? Which is a sophisticated MVP, but it has to be, like we said. So now you will start building the community. So in a way, you are doing it.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what you would have done.
Longer than other people.
It's just that your MVP is a lot more sophisticated than what others might be, because it is a slightly more complex offering in on the back end side of things, I guess. So I guess the steps are always there. They're always the same, but they're just, you know, sometimes slightly out of order, sometimes just not as black and white as that. Interesting. Do you find that you're still getting other ideas though for startups and stuff that you're just like, oh, we could
no. So like, I actually don't need to have my invention thing by my bed anymore, because like, well, I have my used and loved notes instead. So like, I'll have ideas about used and loved, about things that we can do in it and stuff like that, but I never really have ideas for anything else anymore, which is great.
Okay, good.
It's all my inventions are, and I have so many ideas for used and loved. Like, there's just so much that we can do with it. It's really perfect for my brain. It's got a lot of legs. It's funny because of a lot of so, you know, I mentioned about how I jump on and give people free advice and things like that. A lot of how those calls tend to go, as well as at some point, you know, they tell me what the product is or the idea, or, you know, whatever stage is, early stage, late stage, and so on. And, you know, they need advice, but more often than not, I'm just coming up with ideas. I'm like, oh, have you thought about trying this? And I end up basically doing that, but for their business, and end up giving them like 20 ideas, and they're like, they're really good. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. And that's it. Friends as well. Like, I've got a couple of friends whose businesses have been like struggling a bit. I'm like, just take me in, like, let's just sit and have a coffee, and I will just brainstorm loads of stuff. I love.
It's so much fun, isn't it? And that's the thing, and that's what people have said to me. Like, I've been asked several times, like, why are you doing this for free? Like, you know, advisors don't do stuff. I was like, because I love it. I just love doing it. You know, it's that solving a problem, the puzzle solving, that kind of thing, of just like, what can we do creatively to solve this issue? And especially when there are limitations involved, that's when I thrive. And the limitation is usually money, right? So it's like, how can you leverage what you have around you in order to make something work? Like, it's like the modern equivalent of being thrown into a forest and just being told to survive. It's like, you know what I mean? That's what it is. It's like MacGyver situation.
Get your machete out. Fix it.
Exactly. Create a TikTok. You know, release 2 pieces of content a day. Exactly. Hard world, hard, but someone's got to do it. So what's next then for the platform? You mentioned obviously about, you know, you want to get the funding in and start scaling a bit there, but what's next in terms of what's the next big steps?
So we are going to introduce personalization, so getting people's once we get the funding and we get the money to do all this stuff, so we're going to add personalization, including like people being able to create like their DNA like they can on Depop, so they can on their profile set the type of things that they actually want to see, because obviously the thing with secondhand is you don't want to see baby stuff if you don't have a baby. Like, there's like so many things that you don't need.
I don't know, there are some weirdos out there that might
so we want to like make it so that the world of secondhand is just a bit smaller and more personalized for people, and use AI and machine learning to like really make that awesome, and build the app and pilot the shop the look curation thing, because I've got some curators on board now who I'm working with, and we're putting all their stuff on the website, so that's really exciting. And they're all, so I reached out to like actually I'm not going to say this bit because I don't really want this bit to be public, but yeah, it's really exciting.
You can tell me offline.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically it. There's so much work to be done, you know, and there's so many things that we're eventually going to add a payments tool as well, so that people don't need to go all the way through to eBay and all the way through to Vinted and all the way through to all those other sites to make the purchase. They'll be able to make the purchase on our site, which will be like hugely game changing.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting as well. But yeah, it's all, oh, sorry, my battery just said 10%, so hopefully it won't run out. Yeah, all of those things, and working on the stuff for Glastonbury and figuring out our customer acquisition channels that we can do that are going to have like the least cost, and things like that. So testing ads more. We did ad testing last year, but we've had to completely stop because we're about to run out of money. So picking that back up again and figuring out like where the taps are basically for growth, because we haven't fully really grown yet, obviously, because I have been in MVP and we've had these issues with the tech that Davey's been working on. So he's needed to like rebuild a big chunk of it, which has been annoying, but good that we've identified it so early and we can just get on and do it.
Yeah.
But it means that the website just isn't that great right now. So for example, it's showing Etsy stuff that is classed as vintage, but actually there's loads of new stuff. So we need to, even though it is classed as vintage on Etsy, we need to weed out those things. And we've had to take Vinted off because of this bug. So yeah, there's just like loads of things that we need to do.
Always the way. It never ends. Yeah. So there's always something. Yeah. So I mean, but you're I think you made the smart move by marrying a developer, though. That was that was smart move.
Yeah,
because otherwise it would have been a big loan.
Yeah, it would have cost us like 200 grand or something by now.
Easy. Yeah, definitely. Sorry,
I was just going to say, we raised last year, so we raised 162,000, which is like nearly all gone now. So even without having to pay for a developer, it still costs, loads of money.
So are you raising currently then?
Yeah, just about to start now.
Just started. Okay. And how's it going so far?
Well, I'm like literally just about to start.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like in the next few days. So we're just putting together our investor list and stuff like that. So
brilliant. So in that case, then, if there are any, I know some investors do watch this already, which is great because it's
cool. Yeah.
And in fact, the guy who I'm speaking to this afternoon is an investor.
Oh, awesome.
Who's doing the third episode of this. But yeah, if there's anyone watching, what would you say as like, how would you what's your elevator pitch to an investor? You gave the elevator pitch of the beginning of what the product is, but what's the opportunity?
The opportunity is that the secondhand market is growing so rapidly that it is the next big thing, and we are in a really unique, unfair advantage situation where we've identified this gap in the market for secondhand. We originally thought it was aggregating secondhand, but that's not enough. The fact that we can convert people from buying fast fashion to buying secondhand with influencer tech is absolutely massive. And like I said, we're the first in the world to do this, and we're the first in the world, in the UK especially, which is where we're focusing right now, to attract these creators, which means instead of with the aggregator model needing to acquire millions of customers for it to work financially, we only need to acquire one curator and get 18,000 customers, another creator and get 200,000 followers. It's an awesome acquisition plan. It's like a marketing flywheel like Depop has of bedroom entrepreneurs, basically. And so it's a great opportunity. And this is the space that is going to be getting all the attention. There's so much money being pumped in from VCs into the resale space for online high street retailers that it would be silly not to jump in on this.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, very well said. I think that I'm sure there's we haven't touched on revenue opportunities and how that works in the model, but we don't have to get into it if you don't want to. But I'm sure that Oh yeah, well yeah. If you could explain that, then how does that model work? Because
so the affiliate model, the aggregator was going to be just affiliates. So we earn money from eBay and Oxfam and places like that. So if anyone buys anything through our site, then we earn commission.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So that would have worked, and it is fine, but it would have cost so much money to acquire the number of customers that we would have needed for that to work, because you need huge volumes, obviously.
Right.
So with our new business model, we are doing a subscription model. So it's kind of like sustainability as a service, because people can pay different scales of access and then get access to the hyper-personalized feed and the hyper-personalized content, and get early access to the curators and their secondhand style drops, because like the best items will always go first. So whenever a curator shares their new style outfit, the best things will go quickly. So it's getting early access to that kind of stuff. And then eventually we'll also include e-personal shopping, so like a much more personalized tool, basically. And it's a much stronger business model. So we only need like 200,000 people to be using the site to earn like 1.8 million monthly recurring revenue eventually. So it's really exciting, and it's like weight lifted off our shoulders, because we were thinking before, like, is this going to work? How are we going to get this many people? And again, at the beginning of our journey, we really naively believed that everybody was going to want to use this, but it's much harder to change people's buying habits, than we thought it would. So
I think you've certainly made it easier for people to make that decision with the platform you created, though. So it like we said, it's less friction, and that sounds like a very interesting model. I think that has legs. I mean, I use Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah.
So there's people want to have a curated personalized experience, and literally the only reason why I pay whatever it is, $8.99 a month is primarily because of the shipping. It does my head in. So that's one thing. You've listed off a ton of benefits there, where it's more personalized, and all the creators, like there's so many value adds to that. Then it feels a bit of a no-brainer to me.
There's so many tools out there now for personal styling that people pay loads of money for, and they to get like new items curated for them personally, obviously, and then shipped to them, and then they try them on and send back things that they don't want. It's all like really labor heavy and stuff like that for the business, but it's also only for new. They don't really do it for secondhand. So ours is a much more accessible way to get personal shopping, because you have to have a lot of money to employ those types of services. But with these, we just send like a list of stuff online that you can just choose whether you buy stuff, and obviously the stuff is secondhand, so it's all cheap anyway. So it just is a much more accessible way. And I think that people are really changing the way that they want to style themselves, like individuality and finding things that suit their shape and stuff like that is becoming more mainstream. Like before, everyone was just happy to just buy what was in the high streets and stuff like that, but people want more individual style now, and that's what secondhand lends itself to so well.
I think for those over, say, the age of 25 and up, yes, it's becoming mainstream. I think like I said earlier, I think the younger generations have always had their finger on the pulse when it comes to that one, but now I think adults are becoming more expressive in the way they dress. And that's I think partially because of the fact that there is access to more variety on an affordable scale, whereas ordinarily you would have variety or something different. It would have to be at a high price point, and so the secondhand side of things plays a huge role in that. So we're coming up to the last 10 minutes. I just wanted to end on a particular topic that I've been thinking about throughout our whole conversation. I wanted to ask your opinion on it. There's another movement as well as secondhand, which I'm really excited about as well, which is this, and I can't remember the official term for it, but essentially people fixing things.
Oh yeah,
right? And there's a huge movement on that, and I really love it because it's going more towards. I mean, it's one thing to know how to do basic carpentry, DIY, and things like that, which I'm a huge advocate of, and I think that that should be taught in schools and everyone should know it. I was very fortunate to be brought up with that, you know, on a building site with my father and stuff. So I know my way around the house and how to get stuff done. But it's even now moving towards something like electronics. And I'm, like I mentioned, a bit of a fan of tech. And that is one, I suppose, of my pleasures that isn't particularly environmentally friendly. I like technology. I will always want the newest game console or gadget. And the problem with that, obviously, is these minerals that go into these, the resources are not only a drain on the planet from a climate perspective, but also come with a lot of human cost, unfortunately, as well. And we've seen a shortage in you know, the certain components too. So this topic of fixing your own things, companies being a lot more transparent about sharing their manuals and guides on fixing, and even the release of laptops and phones now that are modular, that people can update and things like that. Like, I think it's really fascinating. Have you been following that?
Yeah, so even iPhones are changing it so that you can replace the battery and stuff that you couldn't do without going to Apple, without it blocking your phone, which is ridiculous. Right to repair, and like repair cafes and all the community things that come out of it, and skill sharing, and, you know, being able to find people in your community that do know how to fix or like sew something or fix electronics and stuff like that is really important, because I think community is getting lost, you know, along the way. But yeah, I think repair is amazing. Davey's actually just joined as a volunteer for the repair cafe in our where we live.
Oh, okay.
It's just really nice that people know that they can come and bring something that they would otherwise have had to throw away. And then there's loads of seamstresses and people doing alteration on clothes to make them like actually fit really nicely, and it means that you really care about that item. I think that I still feel like that is above a price point for a lot of people, because, you know, it's a luxury, it feels like, to be able to do that. Even I can't really afford to do stuff like that. We are in the depths of startup life, so we're completely skint right now, but whenever I can afford it, that's definitely something that I want to be able to do, to get my clothes altered, because like people change shape and size, and like I've got some clothes that I love that I don't want to get rid of, but don't fit anymore or whatever. So yeah, I think it's great. I think it's the way, like going back to the old ways and looking after our stuff and looking after things in general, and not just seeing things as disposable as much as they used to. So when me and Davey, when we first got together, the first business that we came up with was going to festivals and salvaging tents. So it was called Tent Happy, and we did it for 2 years, and we went to like all the different festivals, Glastonbury, Reading, and all of the different ones, and we would take all the tents home that got left behind, and then we'd fix them up, repair them, and clean them up and stuff, and then sell them. So we sold 300 tents, and then donated 500 sleeping bags to homeless charities. And it was amazing, but it was very labor intensive. But the difference over the last few years, or when we did it was probably 7 years ago now, actually. So we did it for 2 years, and then the 2 years after that, everything changed. Like people weren't leaving their tents behind anymore, because the awareness was being like shouted about so much. Like, don't leave your tent at home at the festival, take your tent home, sorry, that's the thing. People are talking about it more, raising awareness, and then it makes people like stop and think, basically, because I think we're in a culture now where there's so many things that we do where we don't think about it at all. Like the difference between buying new and buying used is if you go into a high street or you go shopping online through the retailers spend so much money on making it so that you don't need to think about it. You just like make snap decisions, and it's like so easy, and Amazon's next day delivery, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's definitely all for going backwards a bit, but then just making it easier for everybody.
Well, that's it. And that's the thing though, like I'm not anti-capitalist or anti biggest corporation or anything like that. Like, I admire the commitment and the energy and the resources they put into companies to do that, so that when you walk in, your mind is made up for you, that things are made convenient, that they are marketing to you in a way that appeals. And like, there's a certain level of, you know, my my business brain that really admires that and says, yeah, well done, fair play. Like, that's good business. You're a business, you're making money. Like, you wouldn't be where you are if you didn't do that. But then on the other hand, I also root for the underdog and doing things differently. But I'm also a realist in the sense that even when the underdogs become popular enough, they become the very thing that they hated, and that's absolutely fine too. Like, that's the way it is. That's the way the world goes. That's capitalism for you. Like, and it's a great thing. Anyone can become a millionaire if you and a greedy bastard if you work hard enough. But it's no, I really appreciate that. I think and you're right. Like, to some degrees, you've got to go back and sort of have these skill sets. But in other ways, there's almost a new emerging skill set, which is to do with technology, which I touched on too, which is a bit more complex and takes individuals with maybe a lot more time to want to learn about. But I think that's really important, because we're seeing a shortage of a lot of these minerals, precious metals and stuff like that go into these devices that are being made. Not enough's being done to recycle them either. I mean, recycling, that's a whole other topic we didn't even touch on. Jesus Christ, am I disillusioned with that? What a waste of bloody time that is.
And disposable vapes. Like, how are they legal?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I see so many people walking around with disposable vapes. And the thing that annoys me about, so you probably noticed me chugging away on this thing. I mean, I bought this. It makes sense financially for me to buy this. Why would I ever buy something that I have to throw away after a use? That's stupid.
And they're all lithium batteries. They're all rechargeable batteries as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anyway, recycling, that whole thing, that's fundamentally broken. So, what's being done to, there are a few organizations out there that are taking old phones, for example, and trying to repurpose the components, but that's very labor intensive, very difficult, for very little return. So we should be fixing stuff and making stuff. More importantly, companies should be making stuff that is easy to fix, or even more important, easy to upgrade.
Yeah, not built-in obsolescence.
Exactly. And that's the huge issue, really. Let's face it, which is why, I think if you want to be eco-friendly, buy a PC and learn how to build a PC, right? That's like the best thing to do. Don't buy a MacBook, because you can't do anything with them. Like, but anyway, bit of a tangent there to it. As you probably guessed, we're both good at that, apparently. I've noticed a trend already. The 2 episodes I've done, the people that I've had on have all been just as, we've matched energy. Just talk, for here, there, little tangents. That's the way to go. But no, look, let's we have to wrap things up, unfortunately. But it's really lovely speaking with you.
You too.
I hope you've enjoyed it, and it would be really lovely to speak again at some point. I don't know when this is coming out, but it'll be coming out soon, and obviously I'll let you know, and tag you and all that sort of stuff. Good luck to you with everything, and you what you're doing is amazing. I have no doubt it's going to be successful. Good luck with the raise as well. It's coming up, and anyone that's made it this far into the video, if you're still watching, and you're interested in investing, I've showed you. And I'll obviously include all of your information in the description of the video as well. But get in touch with Jess and give us some money.
Yeah, please. Help us.
Right.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great, and I love that it's just been about anything and everything. It's been really nice.
Yeah, why not? Maybe I should impose some sort of structure on this. I don't know. But I just feel like it's just nice to chat.
See where it goes, yeah.
And look, if anyone, and the hope is as well, anyone who does want to work with you in future, they get a sense of who you are. And that's the thing. And I think people buy from people, people invest in people. So, potential future customers and potential future investors, they see you're a lovely individual, you're clearly very passionate about, and very knowledgeable about what it is you're doing. And I think that makes a huge difference. Sometimes just having a little profile photo on a profile doesn't do enough.
Yeah. So, agreed. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to probably share this with some investors. So thanks a lot.
If they've got 2 hours.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much again, and have a lovely day, and we'll keep in touch and keep chatting, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Gregory. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.